So it's my pleasure to introduce Chuck Oliver. Chuck is a seasoned leader with over 30 years of experience in the U.S. Forest Service, where he served as a district ranger and district forest supervisor at the Walla Walla Whitman National Forest, and most recently as the deputy director for natural resources at the Washington office. Throughout his career, Chuck has worked to shape forest management practices across the West, with a particular focus on collaborative, science-based approaches to land stewardship. Chuck was part of the Bitterroot Ecosystem Management Research Project, a pioneering effort that blended ecological science with public engagement. He also served on the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Advisory Committee, helping to guide large-scale, multi-stakeholder forest restoration efforts grounded in ecological health and community well-being. Please join me in welcoming Chuck Oliver, whose decades of experience and thoughtful leadership continue to shape our future of our forests.
Thanks. She makes me sound pretty good. So I'm going to put a timer on here for me because what I'm doing now, I've been doing for the last 5 years, and I feel very passionate about it. I feel very excited about it, and I feel very disappointed about it. There's just a lot going on. Right? When I first came to the Washington office, my goal was to do what most people do with the agency in the Washington office. You go get your high 3, and then you go back to do what the cool things are that you've been doing. I got out there, sorry, appreciate the nod. I got out there and had a chance to do some work and start meeting some folks and see what opportunities there were to try to make a difference at the agency scale instead of the individual unit scale. And it's kind of daunting, kind of scary to think that, wow, you know, maybe I could do something that's going to have an effect across the agency over time. So I had, at the same time I started, I had 5 other range staff that started at the same time. And it was pretty cool that we had a group of folks that were all kind of like-minded in terms of wanting to take a look at who we are, how we do business, and what does that mean for us into the future. And quite frankly, we saw a bleak future. You know, we've been dealing with issues from a rangeland management standpoint for a long time. And a lot of those are on the ground, a lot of those are external, but a lot of those are internal as well. And it's amazing how much of our battles that we rage are our own internal, that we're trying to deal with and figure out how to work around and move forward. So we took a step back and said, well, how do we do that? You know, what's the process to start trying to make some wholesale change at the agency level? First response was, it ain't gonna happen, you can't do it. And those folks were not terribly wrong. But we figured we had to try, you know, where do we go? So we started by, first off, looking at our directives, those manuals and handbooks that drive our work that we do out there. And the look that we took, it was back in the late 80s, 88, 89, 90, when they first decided that, hey, we need to update our manuals and handbooks, right? These things are old. We haven't done a serious look at how we do business in the agency for a long time. Had a good start, did a lot of work, but as a previous speaker mentioned, it's political, right? Everything we do is political, has a political bent or a political bias to what's happening out there. The North Dakota delegation had a lot of power at that time, right? They knew the right people in the right places. So they essentially got us shut down. So we didn't just put it off and it's like, we'll do this later. It's like we shelved it, right? We never did take that hard look at our directives, our manuals and handbooks and how we do business. So when we got into it, it's like, it's been at least 30 years since we've looked at them, much less made any changes. How far back does that go? Nobody had any clue. There's been incremental changes over time. We've done small things here and there, some adjustments, but it's like, okay, here's this huge daunting task that we have before us, and recognizing that the ability for an individual delegate at a state can shut us down. It's like, okay, how do we go about it differently where we don't have that undermining, taking out the underpinnings of where we think we need to go to move forward. So set that aside. We dove into it and started doing it. I said, well, what are the other pieces that we need to look at? Now, where are we and where do we go from here? Sorry, I got my phone on mute, but not my watch. It's new. I haven't figured it out yet. Anyway, so it's like, who do we need to be? Where are we now? What are the benefits of what we're doing? What are we lacking, and where should we be? And so we started taking a broader look. It's like, well, who are we in the future? What are the questions we need to ask ourselves? And we say the future, we're talking 25, 30 years down the road. How do we remain relevant as an agency, as a program within this agency? And there were some tough questions to be asked. And some of the questions we asked included, what if there is no cattle grazing on public lands 20, 25 years from now? Who are we and what is our role? All right, so we arted up those questions and started looking at, okay, how do we address these questions? Where do we go? What do we do? We thought, well, first off, we need to take a hard look at who we are, right? As an agency, the Rangeland Management Program has always been an afterthought for the Forest Service. Forest Service, the tree on the badge, all that stuff kind of lets you know what the Forest Service is all about. We do have a strong and thriving rangeland management program, but we don't get the focus and the attention. And there's some good to that, and there's some downsides to that as well. So when we started looking at who we are, one of the first things that we did was how does the world see us internally and externally? And bottom line is the world saw the range program for the agency as glorified permit administrators. We were cow cops. That's what the range program for the agency was. That was our job, right? So we didn't need a lot of money. We didn't need a lot of expertise. We didn't need a lot of anything because we just had to make sure that things continued to happen as they had always happened, how they'd been happening, how the expectation was that they would continue to happen into the future. So our first step was to say, we need to change our image. We need to make sure people know who we really are. And who we really are not the range program for the agency or the rangeland management program for the agency. So the first step was to get the word out to folks to say, hey, over half of this agency is non-forested ecosystems. Rangelands and grasslands are a huge part of that, right? And that is our obligation to manage those lands, not manage how cattle graze on those lands, but to manage those lands, including how the cattle graze on that land, right? The biodiversity expectations out there, when you look at the treed side of the agency and you look at the non-forested side of the agency, the biodiversity is huge, right? There's no comparing the difference. You can talk about old growth forests all you want and how critical it is for all these intricate pieces there. It doesn't come close to what the grassland, the rangeland ecosystem is, right? And we need to get the word out to folks externally so folks understand that this is a critical piece of who we are and what we do, but internally, we had to change everything, right? After you've been doing something and being told that you are something for long enough, you eventually start to believe that, right? And so as an agency, that's what we believed. That's what we had done for all those years, and that's what our intent was to continue to do. So what's the process to start that change? So we thought, well, let's look at a lot of different pieces, right? Let's look internally, let's look externally and see where that takes us. So internally, we thought, what program areas in the agency cross the rangeland management program? And pretty much every other piece of the agency touches, or the rangeland management program touches every other program area in the agency. So if we're going to look at how we manage what we do and who needs to be in this, we need to talk to people across the agency. So we started by bringing a group of people together. We had 150 agency people that we met it was actually in Salt Lake City where we met. And we invited engineers and we invited botanists and biologists and wildlife managers and recreationists and accountants. We invited just a mix. Folks that just started with the agency to folks that were ready to retire in the agency. And we said, what do you see? From a rangeland management standpoint, what do you see is, well, first off, who are we? Who do you see us to be? and tell us that, and then tell us what we need to be doing different. When you view who we are and what we're doing, what kind of adjustments do we need to make? What are the bad things we're doing? What are the good things we're doing? But it's just an opinion thing on their piece, right? And we got a lot. We got 250 flip charts full of notes, and this is who you are, who we see you as, what we think you should be doing. Here's how you should be doing things different. We yarded that all up, right? We put it together and came up with 70 pages of notes, and we did that before our next step. The next step was that we wanted to see those people that work with us on a regular basis. What do they think of us? How do we work with them, and how do they work together in helping us manage, right? So we brought a group of folks together in DC. We asked some industry folks. We had PLCE and CBA participate. We wanted NGOs. We had the Mule Deer Foundation. We had TNC. We had I don't remember which other one. And we had other agencies. We had BLM. We had NRCS. We had ARS. We had tribal. We had the Intertribal Buffalo Council and the Intertribal Agriculture Council participate, and we invited environmental interests. And the three that we happened to invite, and I need to tell you this story just so you kind of see where we're headed with this. We invited Western Watersheds, the Center for Biological Diversity, and Wild Earth Guardians. When we did that, we had several environmental groups that called us and said, hey, you forgot us. And it's like, well, you know, we need to keep the number down, right? We wanted a group where we could actually have some conversation. And so that's where we landed. Well, one of them asked us, why? Why did you choose those? And I didn't tell them why, but I'll tell you why. We chose those groups because we had a list of our serial litigators. Who are the groups that are the most controversial for us, right? Because we're afraid of those groups. We run from them. We do everything we can to try to keep them out of the picture. So how do we change that, right? And how do we bring them in with the ranching industry and have some discussions to talk about, okay, where do we need to be? How do we do things? How are we different? Or how do we need to be different moving forward? So that was really pretty cool. And kudos to Josh. He was he was a representative from Western Watersheds who showed up. You know, people thought we were crazy. It's like, you're gonna go nowhere, right? You get that group of folks in a room, and it's not gonna work. But it did. I felt it did. I don't know. You may have a different view, but we had some great conversations. We had some really good notes that drove us to the next step. Right, and we did a webinar with tribes, invited all the tribes that we have listed anyway. We invited all the tribes to a webinar. Just tell them, hey, this is where we think we need to go. This is what we want to do. You know, give us some input. Talk to us. And we did that for the permittees as well. And people said, well, you're favoring the permittees. It's like, well, we are kind of favoring the permittees because we're talking about a rangeland management program, and they're a huge part of who we are and what we do. So we had to understand what we're doing and where we're going, because if we're going to expect change, we're going to expect them to change with us. So that was, you know, part of that discussion. Out of all that, we ended up coming out with about 150 pretty solid recommendations about what we should do and how we could change. We can't do them all, and a lot of them on the surface, you know, if you look at it, it's like, oh my God, why would you want to do that? Let's take a step back and talk about why we want to do some of these things. And when you put the strings together, I think it makes a little more sense, right? I sent some papers that just kind of listed out some of the stuff that we're doing, just so you all knew or could see some of the bits and pieces of it. And when I was sending it out, folks inside in the agency were, are you crazy? Why would you send that to these folks? Right? You're giving them a picture of what we're doing, and you're going to give them ammunition to further litigate us. And it's like, well, what if instead of ammunition to further litigate us, what if it's information so they better understand what we're doing and can figure out what their role is in helping us initiate and make this change moving forward? And that's kind of been my look at where we need to go and how we need to do things. I've been accused of looking at the world through my rose-colored glasses. I probably do, but if nobody thinks that it can be done, it's never going to get done, right? So where do you start thinking that there are opportunities for change? And there's usually if you're going to have some profound change, there's a catalyst, sometimes good, sometimes you don't even know that it was there, and sometimes it's bad, right? Maybe this is our catalyst with this administration that we have and the attack on the agencies and public lands. You should hear inside the agency the talk, where we're going, how we're doing things. It's crazy. People are just freaking out. They're afraid. We get the timber EO, right? That's our entire focus is the timber EO. But what do people remember? People remember that the Trump administration, first time around, they decided that we should have a 4 billion board foot target. We couldn't reach it because it's not ecologically possible. And that's because the people within the agency are pointing out that if you do this, then these are the consequences, we can't go there, right? So there are a lot of friends within the agency that are concerned about what we look like, what the ecosystem looks like, how do we survive into the future? Well, we have that same now, except instead of 4 billion, they want 4.1 billion. The big difference is they gutted us, right? They took half of our workforce and said, we still want you to do this. Okay, I don't know how that makes a lot of sense, but anyway, I'm out of time, so let me just tell you, can close out real quick. Okay, here's my vision, and here's what I want to ask you, a recommendation or suggestion. Right, I've made the same suggestion internally, and I got a lot of eye rolls and a lot of whys on this, and I don't expect to get a whole lot different from you all, but right. As long as we see you as the enemy, you are the enemy. As long as you see us as the enemy, we are the enemy. How do we change that view, right? There's been a push to get livestock grazing off public lands for a long time. When I first started with the agency, no moo in 92, cattle free in 93, just some of the phrases that they'd come up with back then, but there was a huge push to do away with cattle grazing. On the other side, and I started my career in Catron County during the new Sagebrush Rebellion, right? So we had the environmental groups, hot and heavy, and we had the ranching groups that were pushing back even harder. And I felt kind of squeezed in the middle, and there were some really interesting things that happened during that time. But what I'm asking now is, it's been a long time that trying to get cattle grazing stopped on public lands. What if you change your tact in where you're going and how you're working? What if instead of trying to get cattle grazing off of public lands, what if you find your in to work with public land managers to help them manage better into the future? My story internally was, instead of trying to figure out a way to hide what we're doing, keep the environmental groups at a distance, not let them know what's happening, and being afraid of lawsuits, what if we open that door and invite them in to join us in those discussions? How could things look different, right? We don't get a big budget. We spend an inordinate amount of time dealing with FOIA requests, dealing with prepping for litigation, and all that work is taken away from us actually being on the ground and dealing with the things that need to happen out on the ground. Right? We have a lot of great permittees that want to do some good things out there. Most of them are just doing what they've always done because there's nobody there to help them say, here's how we could do it different, right? Where are you in this process? How do we help you make that change? So, sorry, went over, but I have 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, no, that's okay. Great.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for the time. I will be around. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of cool stuff we've got going. I'd really, if you're interested at all in some of it, I will tell you that I've got more interest from outside the agency than I have from inside the agency to want to see some of the things that we're doing succeed moving forward. So, thank you.